The rain fell hard over the ruined city, washing away the dust of war, but not the pain that lingered. Chains clinked against stone as a small figure stumbled through the streets. Her wrists were bound, her head hung low, and the glow of alien soldiers' armor reflected in the puddles around her. The girl's skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, showing she was not human. Her captors barked orders in a language of sharp clicks and growls, shoving her forward like she was nothing more than an animal. She had no idea how many days it had been since her world fell. Once she was the daughter of a respected leader, living in a home filled with music and stories. Now she was a trophy, dragged before laughing soldiers who saw her suffering as entertainment. Her clothes were torn, her feet blistered, and her heart heavy with shame. The chains around her wrists were not just metal, they were a reminder that she no longer belonged to herself. Among the ruins, people hid behind broken walls, too afraid to speak. No one dared to interfere when the alien war patrol passed by. No one except one man. He stood at the end of the street, tall, still, and strangely calm, his dark coat flapping in the wind. The alien soldiers noticed him and stopped. The air grew tense. The man's eyes met the girl's for a brief moment, and in that single look she saw something she had not seen in days: recognition. Not of her as a prisoner or an alien, but as a person. One of the soldiers barked at him. Raising its weapon, he didn't move. Instead, he took one slow step forward, his boots splashing through the muddy water. The rain dripped from his face, but his gaze stayed fixed on her. The soldiers shouted louder, warning him to step aside. The man reached into his coat, and for a second, everyone thought he might pull out a weapon. But instead, he pulled out something else, a small piece of cloth, white and clean. He held it up for the girl to see. Her eyes widened because she understood the meaning. It was not just cloth. It was a signal, a promise. It meant safety. One of the soldiers stepped forward, shoving the girl hard so she fell to her knees. She felt the cold water seep into her skin, the weight of the chains pulling her down. The human didn't look away. Instead, he spoke his voice, calm, deep, and in the alien language. The soldiers froze for a moment, surprised. Few humans knew their tongue, and even fewer dared to use it to address a patrol. "What happens next," he said slowly, "will be remembered." The leader of the alien patrol let out a low hiss, signaling his men to prepare their weapons. The human took another step forward, and this time his coat shifted enough for them to see the metal strapped to his side. It wasn't a rifle like the soldiers carried. It was older, heavier, and human-made. The kind of weapon known for one thing: it never failed. The girl's heart pounded. She didn't know who this man was or why he would risk his life for her. But in that moment, she felt something she had thought was gone forever: hope. The soldiers laughed harshly, underestimating the lone human. They were bigger, stronger, and armed in numbers. But the man did not back down. A gust of wind swept through the street, carrying with it the sound of distant thunder. The human slowly raised his hand and pointed to the chains on the girl's wrists. His voice was steady, but the weight of his words was like iron. "Let her go." The alien leader growled, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. This was not how humans were supposed to behave under their rule. They were meant to be broken, quiet, afraid. Yet this one stood as if the rain itself was his shield, as if nothing in the world could move him. The girl swallowed hard, her breath trembling. Around her, the city seemed to fade away. All she could see was the human's unwavering stare, and all she could hear was the slow, steady beat of her own heart. Something was about to happen, and deep inside, she knew nothing would be the same after this moment. The rain eased into a steady drizzle, but the tension in the street only grew heavier. The alien leader tilted his head, studying the human. His soldiers shifted uneasily, their weapons still raised. The girl's breath was shallow, each second stretching longer than the last. The leader hissed something sharp. and one of the soldiers kicked the girl in the side, forcing her to cry out. The human didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened. His hand dropped slowly toward his weapon. The patrol members straightened, ready to fire, but there was something in his movement steady, controlled, that made even their trained instincts. "Hesitate. I said let her go," he repeated, his voice like stone. The leader barked an order, and the soldiers began to circle him. The human stepped forward to meet them, his boots splashing through shallow puddles. His coat shifted, revealing the weapon at his side more clearly now. It was a human sidearm, old but clean, its black metal gleaming even under the dim light. The girl's eyes darted between the soldiers and the man. She could feel the weight of the chains on her wrists, but for the first time, they didn't feel like the end. They felt like something that could be broken. The first soldier lunged at the human, swinging its weapon like a club. The man moved, faster than she thought possible, sidestepping and slamming his fist into the alien's throat. The soldier collapsed into the water, gagging. The others shouted in alarm, aiming their rifles, but before they could fire, the man drew his weapon. In a single smooth motion, the sound of the shot cracked through the narrow street, echoing off broken walls. One of the soldiers fell instantly, its armor smoking where the bullet had struck. The girl froze. She had never seen anyone move like this, swift, precise, and without hesitation. The human didn't waste bullets. Each shot found its mark, each movement controlled, as if he had fought battles like this 100 times before. The leader roared in rage and charged, his massive frame slamming into the man. They both crashed into the side of a crumbling wall. The girl's chains rattled as she tried to move, but her legs were still weak from days without rest. She could only watch as the human and the alien leader fought in the rain, fists striking against armor and bone. The leader was stronger, his claws slicing through the human's coat, but the man fought with a skill that turned every weakness into an opening. With a sudden twist, he drove the butt of his pistol into the alien's jaw. The leader staggered, and in that instant, the human grabbed the chain between the girl's wrists and pulled hard. The metal links snapped. She gasped, the pain of freedom, almost overwhelming. He didn't speak, he simply nodded toward the shadows between the buildings. She understood. She had to run, but she didn't move. Something inside her refused to leave him there. She watched as another soldier rushed in from behind, and without thinking, she threw herself forward, slamming into the attacker. It wasn't enough to knock it down, but it was enough to give the human a clear shot. The soldier fell, and the man's eyes met hers for a second. There was no time for words. He grabbed her by the arm and pulled her into the darkness of a side street, dot behind them. Shouts and gunfire erupted as the surviving soldiers regrouped. The man led her through narrow alleys, his pace steady even though danger was only steps behind. She could barely keep up, but his grip never loosened. When they finally reached an abandoned building, he kicked open the door and guided her inside. The room smelled of dust and oil. Broken machinery lay scattered on the floor, and faint light streamed in through cracks in the wall. He let go of her arm, scanning the shadows before locking the door. Only then did he turn to her. "You're safe for now," he said. His voice was calm, but there was a weight in it that told her safety was only temporary. She stared at him, unsure what to say. Her throat was dry, her heart still racing. She wanted to ask who he was, why he had risked his life, why he had spoken to the soldiers in their own language. But the only words she could find were quiet and uncertain. "Why me?" The man looked at her for a long moment, then answered without hesitation. "Because they think no one will stand for you." "They're wrong." The sound of boots and growls echoed faintly outside. The girl realized this was not over, not yet. The sound of boots outside grew louder. The girl's breath caught as she glanced at the door. The human moved quickly, pushing a heavy piece of broken machinery against it. The metal scraped across the floor, masking the faint growls of the soldiers closing in. "They'll track us," he said, scanning the room. His eyes moved like someone used to finding exits in dangerous places. "We can't stay here." She hesitated. Her body ached from days of captivity, but something in his voice made her push herself to stand. He looked at her wrists where the chains had been. The skin was raw and bruised, but she didn't complain. "Follow me." "Stay close," he said. He led her to a trapdoor hidden under a pile of scrap. When he pulled it open, a cold, damp smell rose from the dark space below. Without another word, he climbed down first, then reached up to help her. She gripped his hand tightly as she lowered herself into the darkness. The tunnel was narrow, lit only by the faint glow of distant light filtering through cracks. Water dripped from the ceiling, echoing in the silence. The air was heavy with dust and the faint scent of rust. The girl's footsteps were soft, but her mind was racing. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, but every sound felt like it could. "Give them away." The human moved ahead with confidence, his step sure. It was as if he knew every turn. At one point, they reached a fork in the tunnel. Without hesitation, he took the left path, motioning for her to follow. She did, trusting that he knew where they were going. After what felt like hours, they emerged into a wide chamber filled with old human machinery. Some of it was broken beyond repair, but others looked like they could still work. The girl's eyes widened when she saw the markings, human military symbols, faded but still visible. "This place," she whispered. "It's yours?" He gave a small nod. It was ours, long before they came. Before she could ask more, the sound of voices echoed down the tunnel they had just come from. The soldiers had found their trail. The human moved quickly to a large crate and pulled it open. Inside were weapons human-made, worn but deadly. He handed her a small blade. "Can you use it?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "I can." "Try." "Good. You might have to." The voices grew closer. The human took position near the entrance to the chamber, his weapon ready. His movements were sharp, precise, like a soldier preparing for battle. The girl watched him, realizing he was not just a man who had wandered into her rescue. He was trained, disciplined, and dangerous. The first soldier stepped into the chamber, its glowing eyes sweeping the room. The human fired without warning, the shot echoing like thunder in the underground space. The alien fell, but more rushed in. The girl gripped the blade tightly, her heart pounding. One soldier broke past the human and charged toward her. She stepped back, fear clawing at her mind. But then she remembered the way he had looked at her in the street, like she was worth fighting for. With a sharp cry, she swung the blade, slashing at the alien's arm. It roared in pain, giving the human enough time to turn and finish it with a single shot. The chamber became a storm of noise, gunfire, shouts, and the clash of metal. The girl fought to stay out of the way, but twice she had to raise the blade to block an attacker. Each time, the human was there, covering her, making sure she stayed alive. Finally, the last soldier fell. The echoes of the fight faded, leaving only the drip of water in the silence. The human lowered his weapon, scanning the entrance for more enemies. "They'll send more," he said. "We need to move." She swallowed, her hands trembling, the blade still slick in her grip. "Where are we going?" He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Somewhere they can't follow." And with that, he turned toward another tunnel, one that sloped upward into faint light. She followed, her steps slow but determined. For the first time in days, she felt like she was moving toward something other than captivity. She didn't know what waited ahead, but she knew she would face it with him. The tunnel sloped upward for a long stretch before they finally emerged into the open air. The sky was heavy with dark clouds, and the rain had started again, falling in a cold mist over the ruined landscape. From here, the city looked like a graveyard, broken towers, shattered streets, and fires still burning in the distance. The human scanned the horizon before motioning for her to follow him toward the cover of a collapsed overpass. They moved quickly, weaving between debris and avoiding the open streets. Every sound made her flinch. Distant engines, the hiss of alien voices carried on the wind, but he never slowed. When they reached the overpass, he crouched low and checked the road above. Satisfied it was clear, he led her inside the shelter of its concrete shadow. Here they were hidden from the sky. The girl sank against the wall, her legs trembling. The fight underground had drained what little strength she had left. "You need food," he said. From a pouch on his belt, he pulled a small pack and handed it to her. Inside was dried human rations, tough, bland, but enough to keep her going. She ate quickly, barely tasting it, her eyes still darting to the shadows. "Who are you?" she asked finally, her voice soft. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked out toward the ruined skyline, as if deciding how much to tell her. "Name's Carter. I was a soldier, before they took the city." "And now?" "Now," he said, his eyes still on the horizon, "I'm just someone they haven't caught yet." She studied him. His face was calm, but there was something behind it, a shadow of loss, a quiet anger. She wondered how many people he had lost when the aliens came. Before she could ask, a faint hum filled the air. Carter's head snapped up. The sound grew louder, sharper, until a patrol craft swept overhead, its searchlights cutting through the rain. He grabbed her arm and pulled her deeper into the shelter. The light passed just meters away, but they stayed perfectly still, barely breathing until it moved on. "They're hunting us," she whispered. "They're hunting me," he corrected. "But now you're with me, so they won't stop." Something about his tone told her this was more than just a rescue. He had a reason for being here, a mission she wasn't part of until now. When the hum faded, they set off again, moving through narrow back alleys. Carter's pace was steady, but every turn seemed deliberate, like he was following a path only he knew. After a while, they reached the edge of the city, where broken farmland stretched out under the dark sky. "This way," he said, leading her toward a ridge. From the top, she saw something in the distance, lights, faint but steady, clustered together like a small camp. "What is that?" she asked. "Safe ground," he replied. Her chest tightened at the thought. She had almost forgotten what safety felt like. But as they moved closer, she noticed how tense Carter had become. His hand stayed near his weapon, his eyes scanning every shadow. When they were halfway there, a rustle came from the tall grass ahead. Carter stopped instantly, raising a hand for her to do the same. Figures stepped out of the darkness, 3 of them, armed, their faces hidden behind human-made masks. One of them spoke, his voice rough. "You're late, Carter." "I had company," Carter said, glancing toward her. The man's gaze followed his, pausing on the girl. "An alien?" he said, his tone unreadable. "You brought one of them here?" "She's not one of them," Carter replied sharply. "Not anymore." The masked figures exchanged looks. The girl could feel their suspicion like a weight in the air. She didn't know who they were or what Carter had just led her into, but something told her trust wouldn't come easily here. The masked men didn't lower their weapons. The girl stood still, her hands slightly raised, unsure if they would shoot. Carter stepped in front of her, his body shielding her from their line of fire. "She's coming with me," he said firmly. The leader of the masked group tilted his head. "You know the rules, Carter. No outsiders, no aliens. You bring one here, you bring trouble to all of us." "She's not a threat," Carter replied. "She's a prisoner they were dragging through the streets. I couldn't leave her." "That's not the same as trusting her," the man shot back. The silence stretched. The girl could feel every pair of eyes on her, judging her for what she was. Her hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to stand straighter. She had been treated like nothing for days. She wouldn't let these people see her as weak. Finally, the leader lowered his weapon, but only slightly. "We'll let her in for the night. After that, we talk." Carter nodded, and they moved as a group toward the lights in the distance. The camp was hidden behind a wall of scrap metal and ruined vehicles, with narrow gaps acting as gates. Inside, a few dozen people moved quietly between makeshift shelters, their eyes following the newcomers. The girl could feel their stares, some curious, some cold. A child peeked from behind a wall, only to be pulled away by an older woman. Carter led her to a corner of the camp where an old storage shed had been turned into a sleeping area. "Rest," he told her. "You'll be safe here tonight." She sat on a thin blanket, her back against the wall. "Are they all soldiers?" she asked. "Some," he said. "Others are just survivors. But they've all lost something." She hesitated before speaking again. "And you? What did you lose?" His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. "My unit," he said finally. "And my brother." She lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry." The air between them was heavy, but there was no anger in his voice when he spoke again. "Get some sleep. We move at dawn." That night, sleep didn't come easily. She could hear voices outside, low, tense. People were talking about her, about whether she could be trusted, about whether Carter had made a mistake bringing her here. At one point, she heard footsteps stop outside her door. A woman's voice spoke quietly. "Carter's risking too much. She's one of them, no matter what she looks like." The footsteps faded, but the words stayed with her. She curled tighter under the thin blanket, her mind torn between fear and something else, anger. Anger at how she had been treated since her capture. Anger that no one could see she was more than what her skin marked her as. By dawn, Carter returned, his expression unreadable. "They've agreed to let you come," he said. "But not without conditions." "What conditions?" she asked. "You'll have to prove yourself." She frowned. "How?" "They want you with us on the next run, outside the walls. If you can hold your own, they'll trust you. If not—" He didn't finish the sentence, but she understood. She looked down at her hands, still marked by the bruises of her chains. She was tired, sore, and afraid. But deep inside, she knew she couldn't walk away from this. Not now. "Fine," she said quietly. "I'll do it." Carter studied her for a moment, then gave a short nod. "Then get ready. We leave in 1 hour." Outside, the camp stirred to life, people preparing for whatever lay beyond the walls. Somewhere in the distance, a patrol ship's hum broke the morning silence. The girl tightened her grip on the blade Carter had given her. She wasn't just a prisoner anymore. This time, she would fight. The sun broke through the heavy clouds in thin, pale beams as Carter led the small group out of the camp. The girl walked beside him, the blade strapped to her belt. Ahead lay the ruined farmlands, open and exposed, with no cover except scattered wreckage. Their mission was simple, or so they said. The group needed to reach an old human supply depot and bring back whatever weapons or food they could find. But Carter's eyes told her there was more to it. They moved quietly, every step measured. The wind carried distant sounds, the hum of alien patrol ships, the faint clank of armored boots. Somewhere far off, the girl kept scanning the horizon, her heart steady but her grip tight. When they reached the depot, the building was nothing but a shell. The walls were scorched black and parts of the roof had collapsed. Carter signaled for the others to spread out. The girl followed him inside, picking her way through broken glass and twisted metal. It was quiet, too quiet. Suddenly, a shadow moved near the far wall. She reacted without thinking, drawing her blade just as an alien soldier lunged from the rubble. The impact knocked her backward, but she rolled to the side and slashed at its leg. It stumbled, and Carter was there in an instant, finishing it with a single shot. More came. From every corner of the ruined depot, alien soldiers poured in, their growls filling the air. The humans formed a tight line, firing in bursts. Carter stayed near her, covering every angle. She fought too clumsy at first, but every strike stronger than the last dot at one point. A soldier broke through the line, charging straight at Carter. Without thinking, she threw herself in its path, driving her blade deep into its chest. It collapsed, and for a second, Carter's eyes locked with hers, not in surprise, but in quiet approval. The fight was brutal, but eventually the last alien fell. The group gathered what supplies they could, loading them into worn backpacks. As they began the walk back, one of the masked men glanced at the girl. "She's no liability," he admitted. "She's one of us now." Back at camp, the others greeted them with relief. The supplies meant survival for another week. But for the girl, the victory was more than that. It was proof. Proof that she was not just a rescued prisoner. She had fought for these people. That night, sitting by a small fire, she turned to Carter. "You didn't save me just because you felt sorry for me, did you?" He stared into the flames before answering. "No, I saved you because I saw someone who still had fight left, and because I need people like that." "For what?" she asked. "For what comes next," he said simply. "One day, we'll take this city back. And when we do, I want you there." She felt the warmth of the fire on her face, but it was the weight of his words that truly sank in. She nodded once. "Then I'll be there." Above them, the night sky stretched wide and dark, dotted with faint stars. Somewhere out there, the enemy still ruled. But for the first time since her capture, the girl felt no fear. She had found her place. And she had found her protector, not in chains, but in the fight for freedom.